Thank you for taking the time to watch this presentation. It has come about through much conversation, consultation and collaboration between Community Plan for Holloway, Reclaim Holloway, the community, service users and service providers. It is about detailing what a truly integrated vision of the Holloway Women's Building could be, the goal to get the best possible outcome for the legacy of HMP Holloway, which would be a truly transformative, visionary, sustainable and inclusive women's building, serving the future community. The Holloway Women's Building vision, as stated in Reclaim Holloway's manifesto, is an accessible, welcoming building of striking design. The Women's Building will provide a positive legacy for the tens of thousands of women held in HMP Holloway over its 164-year history. A bit about the history. The original HMP Holloway opened in October 1852 and became women only in 1902. It was a place of hardship and violence, including 5 hangings, many suicides, and the force feeding of the suffragettes in their quest for women's equality. But most women were jailed just due to poverty, mental illness, and violence. Prisoners included the famous, infamous, and anonymous. The first suffragette was a teacher, Teresa Billington, arrested in 1906 for protesting outside number 11 Downing Street. MP Constance Markovich was elected whilst jailed after her part in the 1916 Easter Uprising, and more recently Green and Common protesters between 1981 and 2000. Other prisoners were jailed for non-conforming or being difficult, those who didn't know their place. For instance, Oscar Wilde did 2 years hard labour for gross indecency. Major Victor Barker, born Valerie Barker, was imprisoned for theft in 1929. "You have outraged the decencies of nature," commented the judge. And Ruth Ellis was the last woman hanged in the UK in 1955, a nightclub hostess convicted of murdering her socialite boyfriend and buried in an unmarked grave in HMP Holloway. She has since been exhumed. Tens of thousands of women, rarely named, barely remembered, spent time at HMP Holloway. HMP Holloway was rebuilt as a modern prison in 1975 to 1981. The architecture was based on a hospital model, which makes it very different and unique from any other prison. This came about through new attempts at rehabilitation, education and therapy, and it also housed a very well fitted out mother and baby unit. Prisoners became more diverse as the UK's black and ethnic minority population increased. Crime has globalised and racism has become part of the system. So we have a skewed and complex prison population, especially in the women's estate. In 2013, the last official inspection of Holloway reveals nearly 50% of the prisoners were of black and ethnic minority, and this was matched by staff. 25% identified as foreign national, and 37% in the inspector's survey said that they felt depressed or suicidal when they arrived. And sadly, in 2016, the suicide of Sarah Reed in HMP Holloway, a 32-year-old mother with a history of mental illness, shocked the nation. So the closure of HMP Holloway in 2016 brought a really strong reaction. Here is a short video from Reclaim Holloway.
When our prisons are relics from the time of Dickens, it is time to sell them off and build new ones that actually work.
This isn't about improving prison conditions. There's far worse prison conditions than Holloway if they were going to close prisons based on prison conditions. This is about the value of the land.
We need a women's building on this site. That means a place where services that were lost through Holloway's closure can be housed, where women's organisations can set up, and where women themselves can come to organise, to heal and create what they need for themselves.
Benefits, living, housing, you know, all of that stuff that needs to be, they need help with. And why couldn't that happen in a building here?
It's such a significant place, you know, where women would go to it and women would make a difference and women would probably grow and develop and achieve and become a part of it and develop something else within it.
There is so much rich history, so many stories to house, to preserve and commemorate HMP Holloway. There have been plays, books, art, objects, exhibits, websites, even the griffins, which are currently housed at the Museum of London. They are spread everywhere, but they have no home of their own. So, why have a legacy for the Women's Holloway Prison? The UK has one of the highest rates of women's imprisonment in Western Europe. In 1995 to 2010, women's prison population in England and Wales more than doubled. There were vital women's services that were lost when Holloway was closed. Here we have an opportunity to build community-based support services with a real transformative approach to prevent women's imprisonment and offending and reduce reoffending. So the consequences of women's incarceration are actually very deep. As the primary caregiver in the family unit, women's imprisonment can have an appalling impact on the family for generations. Many governors of Holloway saw the need for a therapeutic regime, recognising that the causes of women's crimes often lie in adverse childhood experience, poverty, violence and abuse. The percentage of children able to stay in the family when their mother is sent to prison is just 5%. That means that 95% of children whose mothers go to prison are taken away from the family home. Maybe they're put into care, maybe they have to stay with family members, but it is so disruptive for the child. The drivers and patterns of women's offending is different from men's. 49% of female prisoners identified as being victims of domestic violence themselves. 48% of women sentenced to immediate imprisonment in 2017 were for theft offences, and 87% of women have been imprisoned for non-violent offences. Over half of women in prison are victims of serious crime themselves. Despite their crimes being more likely to be non-violent than men's, women are more often sentenced to prison for a first offence than men. Sentenced women are nearly twice as likely as men to have no previous convictions or cautions. Offender management statistics from the MOJ 2018. So for women entering prison, 43% of women enter prison on remand, and less than half of those went on to receive a prison sentence. Black women were twice as likely to be arrested in the financial year 2016 to 2017 than white women. And just as an example, 130 women as opposed to 27 men have been sentenced to prison for their children's truancy between 2007 and 2017. And just to reflect on what the consequences to those children and those families are when the primary caregiver, the woman, has been taken out of that family. So we look at women's mental health. Women are 135% more likely than men to self-harm in prison. And this is an 8% increase in the number of self-harm incidents in women's prison in England and Wales since 2016. The impact of imprisonment on women is especially damaging, and the outcomes are worse than men's. So, post-release, this is a fantastic quote. The real battle I started when I got out. Everything, home, re-establishing relationships, job. Imprisonment just exploded a bomb into every aspect of my life. So, a woman may get sent to prison because she has committed an offence. This is her punishment. But when she gets out, she may have no ID. She may have to deal with her, the fact that her children have been taken away from her. And most women have neither a home nor a job to go to on release. Lorraine Gelsthorpe at Cambridge Institute of Criminology describes this as the chivalry effect, where male judges feel they are putting vulnerable women into a place of safety. And what they don't realise is that their decisions mean that women lose their homes, their jobs, and their children. So, correctional afterthoughts. Women are less than 5% of the prison population, but they are often overlooked in policy, planning, and services. So, the Ministry of Justice in June 2018 released the Female Offender Strategy. And this strategy sets out the government's commitment to a new programme of work for female offenders, driven by 3 priorities: early intervention, an emphasis on community-based solutions, and the aim to make custody as effective and decent as possible for those women who do have to be there. It also sets out a framework of taking this forward, and it's only through effective partnerships at a national and local level that progress can really happen. The role of third sector partners, such as women's centres, working with local statutory bodies, will be key to taking this forward. So if we look at reducing reoffending, we take vulnerable women in the community and those that have experienced incarceration, looking at their reintegration back into the community. We have, on the left, the services and charities that worked with or in HMP Holloway. And this is not a complete list, they are just an example. And obviously we always have legal services that tie in with this, because women may have ongoing legal issues during and post incarceration. So we need housing, we need family services and employment. And with community support and mentoring, giving women creative and educational skills and providing therapeutic services, this all builds self-confidence and enables a woman to actually reach their full potential. It costs between £40,000 to £60,000 a year to keep a woman incarcerated. But there are additional expenses of looking after her children while they're in care, unemployment benefit when she gets out, those housing costs, and the cost to the NHS for treating existing or subsequent health concerns. We traumatise women who have committed non-violent offences by locking them up, breaking up their families, and expecting them to reintegrate back into society without the relevant help. And if nothing else, lockdown has shown us that confinement, even in our own homes, requires support both financially and from the community. So, what can the Holloway Women's Building be? We have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for a real positive change in how we deal with vulnerable and ex-offender women. A standalone, iconic building, world-renowned, transformative and inclusive. With COVID-19 and the future challenges from climate change, food, fuel and water shortages, future city living may look very different from today. This is an opportunity to develop a sustainable community that will be pace-setting and transformative in 50 to 100 years' time. So this illustration is color-coded in order to help you understand how it's going to evolve. So in yellow here we have the services for women only. Charities and services that worked in HMP Holloway will have a like-for-like presence in the building. And so some of these spaces in the women's building will be safe spaces for the women's only services. We need to look at future-proofing with a flexible space that will be able to integrate new services, therapy, and any help that might arise in the future. So well-fitted out creative studios were an essential part of the women's well-being at HMP Holloway, and in turn it will be an essential part of its legacy. So in green here we have the multi-access rooms, the art, craft, education and creative skills rooms will be run on a timeshare dual access basis, allowing women-only sessions as well as sessions open to the general public. Many services in the women's building will be open to the general public, and these areas are shown in blue. This area has premises for some of the charities and organisations that were present in HMP Holloway, plus selected businesses and services. It will be attractive and inviting to the community who will want to use the building. The more diverse the services in the building are, the easier it will be to make it a flexible, sustainable and financially viable operation. Women have complex issues, many involving men. The women's building will be holistic, inclusive and forward-thinking in its approach. The women's building will have operational offices from where the management can oversee the democratic, inclusive and visionary running of the building and its coordination with the community and the additional spaces across the site. So leaving prison can be more traumatic than being incarcerated. Many women leave prison with no suitable accommodation and face a long struggle to get back on their feet and regain their confidence. So in red in the illustration, we've shown some emergency housing and studio flats and assisting housing, which will provide a safe space from where women can access any of the services from within the women's building and work with a mentor to find suitable long-term accommodation, a basis from which she can rebuild her life. And with remote communications, the women's building services can be accessed by women from wherever they end up living in the country or even the world. And this slide just shows how some of that emergency housing and assisted housing can be integrated within the flats across the wider complex, and also looking at different types of housing that would suit different people: the older age housing, disability adapted housing, assisted housing and co-housing. Looking at the women's building holistically, its influence and integration will reach beyond the building itself across the whole site. Visually, it should be something really special. For instance, a geodesic dome on the roof would be used as a conservatory and a viewing station for the city's skyline vistas. It could be lit up at night, a beacon for all women. All the roof gardens would have solar panels surrounding permaculture-style, sustainable planting, mostly edible crops. Beehives will produce honey and pollinate all the crops grown on the site. These spaces can be used by residents as well as being an educational and training platform. Managed by the Women's Building, gardens across the site will have fruit trees and produce a variety of food and useful crops, as well as providing exciting and inviting open spaces for the community and wider public. The open spaces should be flexible and capable of hosting events and markets, etc. If this community is going to be sustainable during future crises, radical and innovative solutions must be implemented. All the shops on the site would be integrated with the Women's Building, ensuring business opportunities for women to run, work and volunteering. Produce, products and services would also be sold through select community-led appropriate outlets. A diverse selection of start-up shops and businesses that serve the local community will be a destination location for the city and provide employment opportunities for women and the local community. An upcycling centre and repair shop and workshops will be essential in a less throwaway world. Computer, phone and IT shop, with more people working from home, an IT hub and support centre will be vital. And a bicycle repair, sales, training and repair centre will also be vital in this car-free, bicycle-friendly space. We will need a large bicycle repair centre. So here we see how the illustration comes together to show how a Holloway Women's Building can be a truly integrated legacy and a vision of future city living that encompasses the whole site, the community, and is a flagship and beacon of forward thinking that the whole city and the country and even the world can look to as a visionary, transformative space for women. And so finally we have words from Mandy, who runs Treasures Foundation, of why this legacy is essential. She says, it would be totally wrong to erase Holloway Prison and dismiss it. There has to be something there because Holloway saved my life many times and numerous other women's lives. Even though it was a prison, it was still a light. There has to continue having a light there for women to go back to. This is a slide that has some links to some of the research that has been done by the Prison Reform Trust. I hope this presentation has inspired you to reimagine what a true legacy for HMP Holloway could be. And as a final treat, here is a short clip from Turn the Key Softly and a look inside the original prison. So Turn the Key Softly was made in 1953 and partly shot there on location. The prison was already 100 years old at the time. The story tells of 3 women charged with theft, shoplifting and prostitution, and are discharged from HMP Holloway on the same day. Thank you for watching.
Follow me. Wait there. The day's discharges.
I know. No need to be so regimental about it.
You've got the list? 3. Jarvis, Quilliam, Marsden. I hand them over to you officially.
Anyone would think it was registered letters.
biggest city in the world, and it's all yours.